Thanks so much for joining us for today's Drawing for Adults class brought to you by the Ann Arbor District Library and the Ann Arbor Art Center. Today we're going to be drawing a realistic bird with colored pencils. So grab a pencil and a sheet of paper and we will get started. Now you will see at the very end I am going to also add a watercolor wash for the background. You don't have to do that. You can just leave it white or color it with colored pencils if you don't have watercolors. It's up to you with whatever resources that you have available. So today I'm going to be drawing what I think is pronounced as a spangled cotinga bird. There you can see the image reference that I'm using, and you do not have to follow along with me with the same bird, so feel free to choose a different one, of course. But the first step is going to simply be to just sketch out the bird. Now draw lightly so that you can erase it as you go, because there's always going to be things you'll see later. I'm going to end up changing the head shape just a little bit, that I made the head a little bit small, and so making sure that you're drawing light enough so that it can easily be erased, and also without carving into your paper. So it's really important that you don't press down hard, because even if you erase, sometimes it'll be kind of like a ghost image almost of where the point of your pencil carved into your paper, and when you're coloring over with colored pencils, you'll actually end up seeing that. So this is a really important thing to remember when you're drawing, so that you do not have that kind of outline of something that you didn't even want to be there to begin with. So just notice the shape of the wings, notice the angles, really pay close attention to the space in between different parts of the bird, so that you're looking at the negative shape around each part, and then of course the just really relationship between, say, like the bird beak and the bird's eye. You know, this part of the upper part of the wing versus the lower part, how much space is between each part. Now, if you have Prismacolor colored pencils, that's definitely what I would recommend doing, that you get this really nice high quality burnishing technique that comes from pressing down really hard. Now obviously I'm doing this digitally, but I have done several of these drawings with Prismacolor colored pencils, and they actually end up coming out and turning out very similarly. But you might not want to burnish it right away. You might want to press your pencil down just a little bit lighter, and then come back later with either a blending pencil that's basically just like a clear pencil that just has kind of that binder and of a colored pencil without any pigment, and then you can press down hard and blend that way, or you can just kind of usually come in with your lighter color that you're using and press down hard and burnish it that way. But that will really make it look just really saturated and really intense with color, rather than what you would normally think of when you think of colored pencils. Here are some examples of some birds I have drawn with colored pencils. These are not the best photos, so I do apologize for that, but I want to show you how these the burnishing looks with actual colored pencils, and how you can really get that nice blending technique even with colored pencils. These are Prismacolor colored pencils versus when you're just seeing me do this digitally. So that yellow bird there at the bottom, you can see there's some burnishing that hasn't been done yet to that tree limb. So as I'm coloring this, I am looking at, where are my darker parts especially, and I can go ahead and include those now, or if I know I'm going to be pressing down pretty hard for this whole thing, I can also go ahead and do almost all of my lighter areas. So in that, like the belly of the bird, I can go ahead and color most of that with the intent of then drawing on top of it with my darker. Now obviously, my darker color. Now obviously if I put the darker color down first, it's going to be a lot harder for me with actual colored pencils to come in and cover that with a lighter color. But if it's a lighter color, you can cover it with more detail on top with a darker color. So the other thing about colored pencils that can be kind of helpful to note is that they are somewhat erasable. I wouldn't say fully erasable, but if you don't press down super hard, you can erase at least a little bit, which is nice so that you can kind of cover it up. So you can see how I'm looking for lines and shapes. So I'm not really getting a ton of a little bit of shading, and a little bit of detail, but for the most part, these feathers, especially on the wing, look kind of silly, right? They look more like fish scales or something kind of wild and crazy, and everything's a little exaggerated rather. So anyway, so as I'm kind of building this in, I have the intent, I know I'm going to come back in with extra shading and extra color. So at this point, I can really start pressing down a little bit harder. I can start going over a lot of my areas with more shading. So I'm going in with, my pencil to add more detail and also more, colors and everything to kind of shade in my highlights. So those highlights shouldn't be, super bright by the end of it. And then once I have my bird pretty much how I want it, you can decide what you want your bird perched on. I'm just going to keep it simple and do the same tree limb here. And then, like I said, I'm going to crop mine and do a watercolor wash as my background just to have a nice finishing touch.